Alrighty, hello and welcome to this build guide for the Vengeance Forge Guard variant endgame build. So on the stream I've had several requests for this build. I've been using it over the weekend to run Vision GL's weekend tournament challenge, and on the first day of the tournament it's a solo self-found, so it's a brand new character with no access to any stash from other characters. The first day it was able to do 240 waves. So it built very quickly, even without ideal gear. So this build is similar to the starter guide for Vengeance, but it is a variant in several ways. So you should use this guide as a companion to the starter build guide, and as an alternative to that version offered there. See which one you like better, and then go with that one. So as far as pros and cons go in comparison to that particular version, the pros are it's got a pull mechanic that is a substantial DPS and CC boost over that build. It's also a hell of a lot of fun. Divine Bolt is built into this one, which increases damage a little bit further. It has better healing from Ring of Shields. It also has better mobility due to not taking Juggernaut stance, which actually has movement speed decrease in it. As far as cons go, it loses Juggernaut's 15% damage reduction. It also takes longer to get high block values because we prioritize other nodes in the passive tree over those. So you'll not block as much and take a little bit more damage as far as that goes. All right, as far as build difficulty goes, I'm labeling this one as experienced. I was a little bit between going experienced or advanced, but this is actually pretty easy to play and do reasonably well. It only becomes more of an advanced thing if you're trying to push far in the arena, because it involves a lot of concentration on a lot of different mob effects that are in a very small area, because it groups up these mobs into these small areas. And so you really have to pay attention, know what you're looking for, and know what you can and cannot tank, what you have to actually get out of. But for a player who is fairly inexperienced or just kind of gotten to the end game but hasn't played a whole lot, you should still be able to play this pretty well and enjoy it quite a bit, as long as you're not trying to be super high on the arena waves. At some point you will find that you need to probably get a little bit better at movement. Okay, so as far as what you should look for in future patches, there's not really a huge risk for major nerfs anytime soon, because the build is powerful, but it's not OP. There are a lot of builds that are going to outperform it as far as waves go, usually relying on some mechanics that may be a little bit broken. This doesn't really have any broken mechanics in it, so I don't expect anything down the line, but things to keep an eye on would be nerfs to Vengeance, Smite, Sigils of Hope, or Ring of Shields, as well as any changes to the Forge Guard passive tree. Alright, with that, let's get into the skill trees. Let's start with the 4 skills that haven't changed from the other build, at least as far as they're still being used, even though the trees are a little bit different. And I'm just going to cover the things that have actually changed on those skills. I'm not going to cover the skills in detail because I've already covered them in the starter guide. So we'll start with Vengeance, where we've shifted over some of the points from Executioner to Rapid Strikes. The attack speed helps us in a number of different areas, including making sure our riposts are up consistently, and making sure that we're hitting constantly, which is very, very helpful for multiple areas of the build. As far as sigils goes, the only change we made is we're no longer worrying about Last Wish, because we won't need to actually worry about mana, so we can keep this up 100% of the time without having Last Wish. That's also saved us a couple of points in powering sigils. And we moved those over to Iron Sigils to increase our armor, which is going to be very valuable for this build because of a unique that we've taken that I'll cover soon. As far as Smite goes, everything is mostly the same. We've taken some points off of Smoothing Balm because we won't need Health Regen as much, because we're going to be healing from other sources. We moved them to Panacea so that we can get a cleanse chance every time that we smite. As far as Ring of Shields, we've taken points away from Sturdy Shields, which is for block protection, and pushed them further into healing through Healing Shields and improved Healing Shields. Ring of Shields is quite a bit of healing for us, so it's pretty valuable. All right, and there's one new entry into the list, and this is taking over for Juggernaut Stance. And this is going to be our pull mechanic. It's very strong, and it's very good at maintaining large groups of enemies that are going to get counterattacked constantly or posted constantly and killing them much quicker. So here's how it works. It's Abyssal Echoes, by the way. I should probably mention what it's called. Mental Echoes are going to take, which gives us an instant cast, but a cooldown of 4 seconds. Reality's Dirge is going to increase that cooldown recovery speed by 150%. Then we're going to take 4 points in Abyssal Remains for mana efficiency and void protection. We're going to take Final Echo for increased area and mana efficiency. It no longer chains. That's totally fine. We don't care. Because what we really want is Pull of the Void, where we're going to pull enemies in. It's going to increase our mana cost, but that's why we're going to take some of this stuff like Abyssal Remains to decrease that mana cost. Then we're going to take 1 point in Abyssal Grasp for pull strength. In my testing, not having any points in Abyssal Grasp caused nothing to get pulled in. Having 1 point caused everything to get pulled in, so there's no point in putting any more points into that, but you have to have that 1 point if you want to get any pulls. The other 2 areas we're going to take are Echomancer for increased cast speed and more mana efficiency. and sonority, I believe is how you pronounce that. I've never seen that word. For 200% increased area. So just really quickly, how you're going to do this, how you're going to kind of build it out, make sure to take these first, and then take the area, and then start working towards the mana efficiency, and then finally finish up down here. Because you're going to need that. Without the pulse strength, this is a pretty useless skill. So you won't be able to use it as much early on until you get the more mana efficiency stuff and the increased cooldown recovery. But you still will be able to use it to group up mobs, and then once you get the full build out, you'll be able to use this just about whenever you need to. So for the passive tree, I'm going to cover this in a little bit more detail because it has changed pretty substantially. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to take 8 points in Fearless. This has health regen in it, but the Vitality is what we really want. Vitality and the Vitality protections are the things that are the hardest to get as a Sentinel because there's very little actually built into the passive tree. And for Forge Guard in particular, in this build in particular, we're going to have several multipliers for both armor and elemental protection. So those are very easy to get as you're fighting, but none of that exists for the Vitality protection, so we're going to take it whenever we can. All right, then we're going to take Gladiator for the 5% block chance. We're going to take Counterattack for the 30% chance to counterattack enemies. This is a significant portion of our damage, so it's really valuable. Aegis of Renewal for a really strong heal type. It's not technically a heal, but for our purposes, it's a heal. 25% chance every time we block. And then 4 points in Banish to increase the damage further of Counterattack by making it a guaranteed critical strike, as well as 40% increased damage. From there, we'll move down and we'll go into Paladin. This will get us 2 of the skills that we're going to need to build this out. We'll take 8 points in Defiance for 8 attunement and 25% increased elemental protection. So there's our first elemental multiplier. It also has the attunement, so that's increased elemental protections for a base as well. 5 points in Honor for that block. Take 1 in Valor for Vitality. Unfortunately, we can't take more in this. I wish we could. There are just too many things we need to take. And Divine Bolt, we'll take 1 point. We're not going to take the one that increases the amounts here because it's just too expensive. But that one's actually going to proc quite a bit. And by taking that alone, that gets us both our Smite and our Sigils of Hope. So we are good to go there. Then we'll move over to Void Knight, where we're going to take 10 of 10 in Abyssal Endurance, give us that Void Protection and 70 health. And now we have Abyssal Echoes, and we can move into Forge Guard, which has the last skill that we need, which we'll get just kind of naturally through going through the Forge Guard, which is our primary passive tree. So we're going to take 10 points in Battle Harden, 150% increased armor if you've been hit in the past 4 seconds. This will be up all the time because you don't have any dodge. You'll always get hit. 8 of 8 in Steel Aegis. 10 of 10 in Rallying Block. This is 50 additional armor and elemental protection for each hit you have blocked in the past 4 seconds. You'll be blocking a lot of hits, so you'll have very high armor and elemental protection as you're in the middle of a fight. Then we're going to take 8 of 8 in Regenerator, 16 health gained on block, 16 health gained on hit. I have been informed that the health gained on block on this is broken. It's actually 16 health gained on kill. So that's not nearly as powerful, but the health gain on hit alone is a huge heal for us because we're hitting constantly between just our regular attacks, between our riposts, and between our counter attacks. We're always hitting enemies. So this is very, very strong. All right, this last section here that I'm going to cover is Shield Crafter, 4% chance to cast Ring of Shields when hit. And your Manifest Shields and other minions have 300% increased health. This is a very powerful node that actually broke the game for me insofar as my computer just couldn't handle it. This build alone is very tough on my computer. There is so much going on. There are so many numbers at once because we're pulling everything in and hitting them with constant attacks that I'm lagging out a lot with this. But as soon as I turned on Shield Crafter, I'm not entirely sure it's Shield Crafter, but I'm pretty confident. As soon as I put that on, and I started to push through the arena, I was seeing 5+ second lag spikes. And I eventually died to it. I did 240 without Shield Crafter. I put Shield Crafter on, I couldn't get past the first like 160 waves because I couldn't actually get out of anything. The lag was so bad that things were killing me before I could actually move my character. So I would suggest if you're getting a similar effect, don't take Shield Crafter. Instead, go ahead and take Flawless Defender, which you're going to want this anyway after Shield Crafter. My character is only level 77, so if you're pushing farther than this, you'd be grabbing Flawless Defender anyway. So just make that switch instead. And if you're still push on beyond that and you want to get to, say, level 100, there's 2 other areas I think you can go in. You can either take Powerful Throw for the 5% increased elemental protections if you've been hit recently for another multiplier on your elemental protections. Or you could take Molded by the Forge for 7% increased melee damage plus 10% increased armor if you blocked an attack recently. This one obviously has 2 benefits, whereas Powerful Throw only has 1, but it's easier to get armor that is elemental protections. So if you find yourself with some elemental stuff being a little bit more dangerous, maybe you go here. But we'll also talk about in the gearing section why armor is so valuable for this build, not just for the obvious reasons, because it keeps you protected from physical attacks, but it's also going to increase our mana regen. So if you want to really spam your abilities, even beyond what you can before you take Molded by the Forge, you can take Molded by the Forge and make it even crazier. All right, let's move on to gearing. So for this build, there's one required unique, one preferred unique. The preferred unique is Undisputed, which is going to increase your physical damage by 200%, and it's going to increase by 10% each time you hit a bleeding target. You'll be constantly hitting bleeding targets, even if you do no more than just take the chance to bleed on hit from Undisputed. It's still going to be enough. It also has increased melee attack speed, increased melee phys damage. As far as I can tell, it's best in slot. Maybe someone could craft something better. I don't really see it, though. I'm pretty sure Undisputed's the best possible item you could have for this build. And of course, the highest rolled one is the best one that you could possibly have, so look for a high rolled one if you can. As far as the must-have, it's Urzel's Pride. This is the first time I've used this in a build, and it's been very effective. It's got the armor, it's got the mana, it's got the strength. Those are all real nice. What we really want from this is the 1% increase in mana regen per 100 points of armor. So when you are playing this character and you're in the middle of a battle, you will get up to 20,000 armor. You could get even more depending on what nodes you take in the late game. 20,000 points of armor equates to 200% increase in mana regen, which is going to be required in this build because this build is very mana intensive. Sigils is very mana intensive. Abyssal Echoes is mana intensive. And Ring of Shields and Smite also do cost mana. And you're going to be using Ring of Shields on cooldown. You're going to be using Smite pretty much on cooldown as well. So the more mana regen you have, the better, so that you can make sure that you can use all of these things as much as possible. You want 4 sigils up at any given time. So Urzel's Pride is the only way I found that you can actually do that, and so we're using it, and it's been working to great effect for me. All right, as far as the stats you want in crafted gear, pretty simple overall, actually. You want your 100% glancing blow, always. That's pretty much a given for every build so far, at least. After that, you're going to focus solely on protections, except for maybe one difference here. You can put an increased melee attack speed here. You can see I don't even have a very good one. But other than that, everything else, we're basically just worried about your protections, armor and protections. You can take an amulet with melee attack speed as well. That's pretty good. And I do have physical damage in this, and I think it's because there's nothing else actually to put in there. But really what you want for the most part is full defense. Oh, and by the way, my gear is far from ideal. This is 2 days of playing on this character because it was over the weekend. So you can do much better gear than what I have. But you can see I'm really focusing my protections. Block chance on my shield. And the one you want to focus the most on this build is your vitality stuff. Because as we mentioned before, multipliers for vitality don't really exist in the Sentinel tree. And so you've really got to push your vitality stuff. Vitality, by the way, is your necrotic, your poison, and your void protections. Outside of those, push your armor, push your elemental protection as well. Focus that stuff, get it as high as you possibly can. You can see here my bases are pretty good to begin with, and the elemental and the armor will have multipliers as I'm in combat, and they'll get very, very high. But I'm pushing my vitality stats pretty much as hard as I can. Necrotic's a little lower than I'd like, but it's still at basically 60%. So that is what I suggest you do. It will help you to take minimal damage from sources of vitality, which are often the things that are most likely to kill you. Poison is what got me on my 240th wave. And then on the one I lagged out on, it was actually the Screech from those undead birds, where it's necrotic damage. So this is the thing that's usually going to be build limiting, so try to push that as much as you can. Similar stuff goes for the idols, by the way. One good idol to get, though, is the increased damage with Vengeance. That's going to be your biggest damage buff that you can really possibly have. 50% increased armor here was a really nice one to get. Bleed's nice to have, especially if you're running Undisputed, but not necessary. And then you got stuff like Poison, Protection, Glancing Blow in here. Really just protection stuff. Physical damage if you find it. Bleach is fine too. It's kind of stuff you'd expect from a really tanky build. Let's finish up with the rotations. This should be pretty simple since it's very similar to the Vengeance Starter Guide endgame version. Ring of Shields is going to go on autocast. Smite is going to be used basically on cooldown both for movement and for its attack speed. Also gives you some base melee damage. You're going to want your Sigils of Hope always on 4. And the best way I found to do that is to just stack it with Abyssal Echo. So Abyssal Echoes is going to be your pull mechanic. So you're just going to be using that to bring things into you pretty constantly. If anything new comes around, pull it in, pull in, pull as much as you possibly can, especially ranged enemies. You don't want ranged enemies sitting back and attacking you without actually getting hit from you. So go and pull in everything you possibly can. Use Smite to move around it if you need to. And then when you get to something, use W and E. Usually I use them together, just W, E at the same time. So I'm pulling and I'm making sure I'm getting sigils up at the same time. As long as your mana regen is high enough, which when you're in the midst of battle, it should be like well over 100% increased. you can just hit them both and make sure you constantly have sigils up. That's how I found it to be the simplest way of doing that rotation. And this is not a very difficult build to play if you do that, because you really just, there's two things to worry about other than, you know, auto attacking with Vengeance, which is using Smite basically on cooldown for your attack speed and then to position yourself where you want to be, and then Abyssal Echoes to pull things in at the same time, just press sigils and basically you're good to go. That should do it. That should cover it for this build. It's pretty simple. It's not much different than the other build with a couple of important changes, but other than that, it's going to play pretty similarly and it's going to gear fairly similarly. And most of the trees are pretty similar, so it shouldn't be too hard to switch over if you're playing with that one. If you're playing new, it's really not a very hard thing to make. As I stated, I made to 240 waves literally playing for 1 day. That's not usual. That's not normal. It's just this build scales very easily, very quickly, as long as you're getting some defenses. It doesn't even need all that much. Like my 240 run was before I had really made my gear very good. I think I'd gotten to 100% glancing blow and just went in. Like, I wasn't worried about my other defenses. That was all I had, but this build is so tanky that it was able to get that far, which was pretty cool. So I hope you enjoyed the build. Have a great time with it. If you want to check out all the stuff I'm doing, theory crafting, have a conversation, talk about stuff, chat, ask questions, check me out on Twitch. I'm there 6 days a week. And also, if you just want to ask some questions in Discord or hang out there or have a conversation of some sort the same way, love to have you join there as well. Thank you all for watching this. Enjoy your time in Last Epoch and be on the lookout for a lot more videos coming your way.